Hello folks, this is going to be my next video, and this is going to be about nationalizing the oil industry. Now, I know that just sounds like a very far reach considering, the power and OPEC and all that nonsense, but there needs to be effort. The oil pretty much runs our most for a country. It runs our cars, it runs trucks, runs our ships that deliver the goods around the world. Maybe we should actually be the one being paid for it. Maybe we should just take over the oil industry, and make sure people are actually buying that $2 worth of gasoline or diesel. Because let's be honest, having high-priced diesel is the reason why food prices went up, spiked, and they're not coming back down. I feel like having a power over the oil will drive prices down. Because let's be honest, oil is what drives our farming equipment and the ships. Let's start with the farming, for example. All the farmers and their equipment, it all runs on diesel. Their trucks might run on gasoline or something like that, but the big farm equipment, diesel. And the issue is that they have problems with their own farm equipment. I know John Deere has some, they're barred from fixing their own tractors. Like, they have to go through tractors if they broke. They can't, buy pieces and whatnot. That's another thing we have to address as the government. But another thing is that the high price of diesel makes farming more expensive. And the margin of error they're working with is like 1 to 3%. Like, that's the profit. Like, they only profit 1 to 3%. Like, maybe we should try to find a way of doing that. And I say the best way to do that is making sure gasoline is cheap for them. Because right now, it's not. I highly doubt that farmers have some deal with, the oil industry, that they get cheap gas or, I don't know, cheap food or something. I find that probably not high to believe. If someone has proof of that otherwise, feel free to show me. But I believe having cheap diesel will lead to cheaper prices for food. And, more people running in people's pockets. Because let's be honest, we drive everywhere. I know our infrastructure is designed for cars, and unfortunately that's an issue that we're now addressing. And yes, it'll take time to modernize and move on from that, but I say for the next 20 years, we should focus about nationalizing the oil industry and making sure the profits not only go back to the U.S. government, but make sure people are actually buying it cheap. And if we had to build our own foundries here, I know that's probably the big issue right now, is that we don't have the foundries and the refineries to actually process our oil, to make sure the oil goes back to us, the American people. Here's the food for thought. How about we just build it as a government? We build the refinery that we need. Use the taxpayer dollars telling them that, yeah, we're building a refinery because this refinery is going to process the oil we bring out of the ground here in America and give it back to your people for cheap. Maybe we should do that. This idea that we have to beg and prod the oil industry to make the refinery for us is ridiculous. If they're not going to build it ourselves. That's what the government's role is supposed to do. It's supposed to help the American people. If people want cheaper oil or find some way to have cheap oil that requires a refinery or nationalizing the oil industry, do it. Don't sit there complaining, saying, oh, we're trying to talk to them. We need to do this and that. Because Trump tried to do that with Venezuela. You know what happened? They told him to get bent. They're not going to upgrade the infrastructure. Like all the oil the 400 million barrels that he was trying to take from Venezuela, and the whole oil industry down there, the infrastructure. None of the oil companies wanted to touch it, and Trump got mad, and guess what? They're not talking about it, because, lo and behold, they don't want to waste their money fixing something in another country for oil industry that is pretty much national. So let's just not freaking worry about them then. Let's just ignore the oil industry and build a refinery, or just take over their businesses, as we should, as a government. Eminent domain, though. I mean, it is a valuable resource. Our army runs on it. The ships that transport our foods and goods run on it. All the cars, pretty much all cars here. Everyone pretty much is driving a gasoline car right now. Maybe we should just call it a national resource that the U.S. government needs to have control over, and we just take over everything, all the oil industry. And yes, everyone would be a federal worker. Yes, it would be a lot of work, but people want the cheap gas, and the industries that rely on it, like food, need the cheap gas, so the prices can be cheap. Food can be cheap. Maybe we should work on that solution. Maybe instead of begging and hoping and giving subsidies to the oil companies, thinking that they'll eventually help us out and give us cheap gas prices and whatnot, ignore them. Go, yeah, you had your time. Oil is a national resource that was needed. All your companies belong to us. Goodbye, CEOs, presidents, whoever they are. It's pretty clear that they're just being paid millions of dollars just to screw us over. It is a commodity. Oil is a commodity that we need, and we should not be paying out the ass for it. So, this is a radical thought. And I'm sure there's going to be so many people upset that we're nationalizing, an oil industry, saying, "Oh, it's socialism." Then how exactly do you plan on getting cheaper food? Because it needs to get transported. No, the equipment that harvests it run on oil. None of it's electric. Let's just be honest. John Deere isn't making giant electric lawn, tractors, putting up all that hay, harvesting all that corn or whatnot. No, it's clear there's no money made in that. So why do we have to rely on them to make the advances instead of just doing it as the U.S. government? Yeah, we have the money. I know we're $40 trillion in debt, but we can still make the effort to make sure try to make prices go down. We need to build that refinery. We need to take over those gas companies, oil companies. Do it then. It's what people want. People want the cheap oil and gasoline to run the company. Give it to them. We need to quit negotiating with the corporations. That's what the next administration do. As a future solution, we need to quit negotiating with corporations, because guess what? We're the U.S. government. We shouldn't be bowing out to the corporations. They should not be dictating U.S. policy. The United States government should be dictating its own policy, and the corporations don't like it. Well, we'll just take their business from them, and they can go somewhere else, in another country. I'm sure there's plenty of countries that are more welcome to take their business somewhere. So, that is what I think a future solution to the whole gasoline crisis we have going on right now, the whole oil and whatnot. Taking over the companies and making sure the American people pay cheap gasoline and diesel for transporting food, harvesting the food, moving those ships. And guess what? Maybe that means we don't have to pay the people. If the oil's nationalized, guess what? The military doesn't have to spend millions of dollars each year fueling their ships and whatnot. We can just take it, and we don't have to pay a dime. Doesn't that save money? Just we could just take the oil, straight from the ground and give it to the military. We don't have to pay anybody. Isn't that food for thought, saving money? So, if you guys, let's have a discussion about it, shall we? I know there are a bunch of people who will think it's socialism. So then tell me, what exactly is the other option? This is what the discussion we need to have. We need to find some middle ground or find a future solution, because the current one right now, oil companies right now, how they're running things, isn't working. It is not working out well for us, and we're paying too much money out of the ass, and guess what? Food prices aren't coming down. So maybe we should actually force them to actually force prices down. Instead of negotiating with them, maybe we should use the leverage we have as a government with a very large military to force the prices down. That's the food for thought for me. Now, if you have a discussion, I hope you have a nice, calm, rational discussion about it, and not just insult me saying, "Oh, so you're just a Nazi, communist, socialist that just wants to take everything from the poor, innocent billionaires, oil CEOs, and give them to American public." Yeah. Well, is that really that bad of an idea to say that you want to give the people cheap gasoline and oil to run their businesses? Because right now, not everything is going to be electric. As you can see, Trump's, throwing out all the electric stuff and all the non-oil, industries out the door. Unless, it's a data center, then that's perfectly fine, stealing our water, electricity. That's another discussion. But then let's actually have a discussion about it, actually figure out the solution. Because my solution is either, build a refinery, government refinery, force the oil companies to move the oil through that refineries and sell the people for pennies on the dollar, or we just take over the entire oil industry and we just sell oil to the American people for cheap. That's going to be my discussion. I hope other people can chime in and we can have a nice, thoughtful discussion. It out.